Welcome to the Happy Achiever Project. This is the podcast where conversations about ambition meets conversations about well-being as we share stories, tools, and techniques that help success-driven go-getters build a life they are happy and successful in. In today's episode,
second, I got to the salary that I wanted to the role that I wanted to. But at that stage, I realized that I don't feel fulfilled. So instead of typically asking questions, I was for the first time not asking questions when everyone expected me to challenge. And I wasn't interested. And then I realized that something is off.
That's called silent quitting. So in your mind, you had quit, but you hadn't actually quit in reality.
Yeah. And
Olia Stasiuk, author of Amazon bestseller book 66 Days Success Formula and founder of the Transformer Academy L&D software, shares with us how burning out led her to travel the world, start a new AI-based software, build habits she didn't know she could possess, and start making her way back to a more balanced and happy life. Hope you enjoy part one of the conversation. She's my first guest on this podcast, so woo! Olia, welcome.
thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here.
You wrote a book. It's called 66 Days Success Formula. And it basically talks about how you persevered through moving here from Ukraine and you worked your way up the corporate ladder, got to the point where you were a D-suite and a director. But then you started to feel like you're no longer enjoying where you are in life. You are no longer living in alignment with your values. And eventually you decided to leave your job, travel the world, and then come back. And then you went on a 66-day formula challenge to be able to remind yourself that you can reprogram your mind and pick up a habit that you never thought you would have been able to pick up.
Yes, definitely. I wrote a book, and if you think that I planned to do so, I absolutely did not. So things happen in my life. Some would say by coincidence, some will say by luck, I will say by fate. The truth is, so before this book came out, there have probably been about 10 years of life that I'm describing there. And the tricky part is people would always tell me, oh, Olia, you're so successful. You've done so many things in life. And they were like, what's the formula? What's important? Is it a communication? Is it the way you do sports? Is it the way you, meet friends? So networking, what's the key? And basically, I was thinking about that for a very, very long time. And so many things happen in 10 years. And believe me or not, I wouldn't call myself lucky in the beginning or super successful. I moved to Canada 10 years ago, really with no money. Only one person who got visa out of 5 friends and with enough money for 2 weeks to survive. And my journey began in Canada. And at that time, I still say I was quite a negative person. And I did not know kind of how to shift my mindset to become more positive, how to control it. I knew nothing about mindset. I just grew up in SSSR kind of structure and lived by the rules of society, right? So super young. And as I started living in Canada, I had to adapt very, very quickly. And I got super lucky in the very first few years to get to Nespresso, where my first professional training started. And in fact, the most important training I've had in my life. Basically, the training was around communication. And so it was saying how our brain understands communication in a different way if we do use positive or negative language. So it really, really programs it. But at that time, I was so young that I absolutely did not understand it. However, I asked myself one question, and that's how I started to look at life from a different angle. And that's what I'll repeat today multiple times. So one of the things that I did, I came back home after this horrible training that I did not enjoy.
At Nespresso?
Yeah. Okay. And I did not understand it. And
what was the name of the training?
Oh, it was just a training for managers. So it was like a whole week of the training, mainly around feedback, how to work with people, how to communicate. But so the trick is our coach, she was with a French background, very strong accent. And then she also like felt scary. We all were scared of her. And then she will kept staring at you and we wouldn't understand what she wants from us, but we were scared to clarify too. So, you know, you like sit there for 8 hours and you don't even want to be there. I came home and I asked myself, who the hell in the world, I'm sorry for my language, will pay for 2 people, flight all over Canada, additionally fly 10 more people from all over Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, let us be there for a week and pay us money for it? I'm like, there is no way it does not produce results. And I asked myself, is it a trainer or is it a content?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought maybe the content actually makes sense. And I started trying it. So that was my journey on discovery positive language. And so since that day, for 7 years, I practice of not saying the word but in personal and professional life, because it actually sets our brain to the negative and basically sets our brain to look for the problem, versus when you're trying to replace it, you look for solutions. I did that for 7 years. For 7 years, my career was flying all the way up. And then in one day in the software company, when I already was building my own learning and development team, I had an amazing team. And 2 of my trainers were so good that I even kind of got a bit jealous in the good way that they're doing training better than I do. So kind of kids get better than parents, I guess.
Yeah.
And so when they started using word but, I felt guilty telling them about it, because I was like, they're already so successful. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm too picky. Maybe I'm too crazy on it. So they started using word but more and more. So did I. And I
So you kind of picked up what they were doing.
Exactly. So for me, it was a shortcut, something that I've controlled for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I started doing the shortcut. I did not understand what it did to me until about 2 years later.
Okay. So if I get this straight, you had this training, management training, it was a communication training that talked about how to shift your brain to the positive by the things that you say, right? And one of the things was to not put but. Can you give me like an example, like of a statement that would include but?
Absolutely. So it's very interesting, because after I heard it, then I heard everybody using it.
Yeah.
And so generally what we do, let's say somebody comes to us to complain, and good example at Nespresso, right? Yeah. So people would normally come in and say, hey, I love your coffee, but it's not sustainable because your capsules are creating bad impact on the environment, right? And so generally the response will be immediately, let's say I know the truth. I know that it's sustainable. So generally the person right away will go in and try to justify. And the way it will start, it says, yeah, pretty much defensive, and it creates conflict. And so what our brain does, everything that we say before the word but, normally is something very nice, because we're trying to make it as smooth as possible. Yeah. And as soon, so people right away kind of already on the good page with us. The moment we say word but, our brain cross out everything we said before and only hear what we said after. Would generally complain, objection, or a counter
criticism.
Criticism. Exactly.
Criticism or something. Okay.
And so that's how conflicts in our life created 80% of time. 80% of time. And so
what would be an alternative way to say that?
Yeah, good. Great question. So most of the people right now will say probably word however.
Okay.
So the word however works exact same way. It's just a nicer way of saying word but. The best way for you, it's many of you maybe guessed it, it's going to be to say word and. And at the same time, as you're trying to do it, you're not only replacing word but, you have to shift the whole part of your second sentence. So in this case, it's instead of saying, but we right now cannot do it, you would shift to something, and I will share with my team as a feedback and we'll see what we can do, right? So see the difference? Problem, solution. And this is just a very basic example.
So the second part would be positive or a solution.
Exactly.
If you're responding to someone. Okay.
Yeah, and you can also prompt to learn more. So be curious. And being curious, it's really keeping the conversation going.
Okay. So you got to this point where you were in a group of people who started using that statement but and started putting the negative part behind it. And that kind of made you to start using it again. So what did that do to you?
Yeah, so it was crazy. I wasn't even realizing it. And so I became a problem manager. So one of those managers that employees don't like in the workplace. And so I've been in L&D. So people would come to me to tell me that they have issue with their managers. And here I am. I'm the person who now saying, but we don't have budget for this. But this is the wrong time. but hold on your idea until the next year. And I literally shut down every single possibility for innovation and creation. And that's what I've been recognized for my entire career. I got awards for it. I literally just got recognition a few months before that. And just within 6 months, it completely shifted. Not only in my work, it also shifted at my personal life. So I started finding excuses and not going out with my friends. I started finding excuses not to work out, gaining weight, and then also finding excuses to justify that, which was not me.
And that's because you kind of programmed your mind now, because you started seeing this. Your mind starts to look for the negative, as opposed to if you had programmed your speech, your mind automatically looks for the positive, right?
Correct.
Okay, so where did that lead to eventually?
So it led me to the burnout.
Okay.
It led me to the burnout. Things started happening very quickly. I also say life always gives you hints. If you don't pick up on them for about 2 times, on the 3rd time, it will make you change. And so I've got a conflict with one of my employees on my team who was upset because I was not allowing that creativity, right? And also because I was not spending enough time with them. And then eventually I also realized that my mission there finished. So I was getting 2 things at once. First, I got negative again. Second, I got to the salary that I wanted to the role that I wanted to. But at that stage, I realized that I don't feel fulfilled. So one of the portions why my burnout came out, I felt empty, even though successful. And so with the burnout, everything happened very quickly. And as I was really trying to cope, the war in Ukraine started. So it hit me even more. And I literally had one question in my head: what am I supposed to do in this life?
So I preach aligning yourself with your core and your core authentic self. And sometimes you get to a point where even though you've aligned yourself at the beginning, you evolve as you're getting there. And when you get to the destination, you're evolved. So you might need to change still. So this isn't like aligning yourself is not something you just do at the beginning. It's something that you need to keep doing and you need to keep looking. And once you start having those feelings, you know that, okay, it's time to realign. It's time to realign. It's time to see how I've evolved on the inside and what the next step is. So you decide that you're going to make a change. You're going to take, so how long were you in this burnout phase, or in this phase where you were no longer enjoying your
Yeah, I think it started probably September 2022. And then I didn't realize it until about December. And then as things starting to get harder, I've noticed one day, so I was the person who always asks questions, care about the company. And I've noticed one day myself in the meeting just doing this weird thing. I was shifting every 30 seconds. So basically I was all over the place. And then I was looking at myself in the camera in the management meeting. And I look at him, I'm like, you look weird. Everyone come and you're not. And then instead of typically asking questions, I was for the first time not asking questions when everyone expected me to challenge. And I wasn't interested. And then I realized that something is off.
That's called silent quitting. So in your mind, you had quit, but you hadn't actually quit in reality.
Yeah. And for me, it was so new that I didn't know what it is. So I went to doctors, and obviously I got really scared. So, because I was super happy. Everyone knows me, person who always smiling. And here you go, completely different person. And so I was hiding at my home. Doctor gave me 2 weeks. She said, severe depression, you have to get on pills. And I was fearing it so badly that she said, you have 2 weeks. If in 2 weeks you do not get a little bit better, you're getting on severe medication. And to me, it was, it's like probably, if we talk about hard drugs, right? I was so scared of it. And so I had to force myself to go through a therapy with the doctor, who was not helpful. He literally turned around and said, you know what to do, because I didn't want to pay for private sessions. And then I just told him, I feel like I need to run, because when I'm running, even though I hate it, that's where basically I start to release a little bit the energy. And so all my life, my father told me, do not cry, do not complain. Basically, I was not allowed to do anything. I was not allowed to yell. And then eventually, because of the health conditions, I was not allowed to be stressed out either. So running kind of became a way to release the energy. and feel a bit healthier.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only thing. And so the doctor, when she told me you're on the burnout, she said, you have to promise me one thing. You're not going to sit at home the entire day, because that's what I started doing. I was avoiding everything and everyone. And then so because I promised to her, I started. Slowly but surely, I got slight progress, and then she did allow me to go back to the workplace. And the moment I entered the workplace, it hit me again. So it just kept going as a circle until, as right now, I remember February 14, Valentine's Day, I called the CEO and I said, I love it, but I can't do this anymore. This is it. So I left the company and I got a contract. I got an offer in Vancouver. Same position, different company, enterprise. And the first few days, I realized that I will have to do exact same thing again for the next 5 years. And I felt that something is off. So I started asking myself, do you really want to go your entire life from a company to a company?
Doing the same things as burning you out?
Exactly, for 3 to 5 years. And I was like, I feel I can help more companies. And then I was lucky enough, life finally brought me another training, and I was craving so badly. But COVID happened, so every training that I was registered for was canceled. And so finally this training at the restaurant group that I worked for was done by external consultants, 2 people who are very, very similar in the mindset, the way I train. And it's almost like I looked in the mirror and heard exact same phrases, but in a bit different way from what I'm used to. And it really helped me to understand quite a few things. So one of the phrases that I really love that Don once said in that training, he said, when I was learning how to drive, I was really scared to turn because of the other cars. So what the driver told me, the instructor told me, he said, do not look for the cars, look for the gaps. What that did in my mind at that exact second, I have an image of the globe, of the world, and instead of having borders, it became one piece with just stamps that I need to get, so almost like just a visa. That's it. World is one thing and it's open to you. You might need a bit more struggle to get to one country and another, but it's all yours. So that was the first learning that kind of made me think, I can actually just leave right now and be anywhere in the world and find who I am. And that's how I started learning what's my calling is, right? Because I was looking, what will make me fulfilled? The second thing, and this is going to be a very big one to the topic of when you're looking for your calling, it's very difficult to be within your family and friends. And the reason for that, because they love you so much that they want to protect you. And because they don't know how you're supposed to live, they only judge from their own perspective, right? So everything they say comes from the place of love.
And intention, good intentions.
Good intention. However, it's most likely not what you need because you're meant to be different. You have your own journey, not like your father, not like your mother, not like your friend, right? And so what I decided to do, and I was under very, very big impact of my father in particular through my entire life. So when I decided where I'm going to go, I went to Asia because I literally knew no one in Asia.
Wait, so at this point, this is how many years after? Because
it happened within 3 months. So when I was in the last 3 months in this new company, so one of the things was when Dawn said about the cars, but another thing when Carrie, who was the partner trainer, she said this amazing thing because we were talking about comfort zone. And this is super interesting. So everybody always say, in order to grow, you need to get out of your comfort zone, right? However, there is an adage that everyone keeps forgetting. There is not such a thing like comfort zone and outside of the comfort zone. There is actually also panic zone. And somehow nobody speaks about it. So often when you come to the new workplace, we are already not in the comfort zone, right? Because new place, new learnings, and then people push us more and farther. And so often we get to panic zone. And that's exactly why so many people quit within the first few months. So I got quite challenging management in the new company. They did a really good thing for me, but they didn't realize that I'm still in the panic zone because of the war in Ukraine and because of the burnout that I've had in the past, right? So my brain, what Carrie said, basically, whenever you're in the panic zone, your brain shut down.
Mm-hmm.
We do not think. We actually make all of the possible mistakes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been in that state from about December till March, right? March, May. So 6 months. And I did not realize, as she said that in the training, I was like, oh my God, that explains it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to leave. So I quit the next day. That was my last day. And I decided to go find myself.
Okay. So Asia, tell us about that.
Yeah, it kind of came crazy. I realized that I have a lot of, after the training, I realized I had two sheets, one sheet, two sides. One was saying everything that I would love to learn more about. Another one was all of the areas that I want to revisit because I think my mind now is in a different place and I need to relearn what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I knew that it will take me time. I had a lot of answers and I had a lot of questions and I didn't have answers. And so I love to the way I buy tickets, sometimes it's funny. I just open Google flights and then I say, here's where I am. I need one flight ticket and I say nowhere or anywhere. So you can actually select that
anywhere,
function.
right? Yeah.
Anywhere, yeah. And so then I look on the map and I look on prices and I look kind of what talks to me. And that moment, I also knew that I'm extremely vulnerable. I was so vulnerable, but also my parents did not allow me to go back to Ukraine. So by default, I would go to my parents. I couldn't. They literally told me until the war is over, you're not allowed. And so I had to figure it out what to do with myself. I also needed to hide. I needed to hide from friends, from family, from people I worked with. I was not ready to face anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so Asia came because there was always really good tickets if you go from Los Angeles to Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go into Mexico for the friend wedding. So it kind of all was working out in that area. And so I found this ticket. I booked it to Tokyo. And then maybe a week before, COVID rules changed and I find out that I'm not able to get to Tokyo. So super last minute, I had to switch to Singapore. And all that to say, at that moment, I told myself, you go to search for your answers, no matter how long it's going to take you.
Mm-hmm.
A year, 2 years, until you're ready, you do not come back.
Mm-hmm.
And you just buy one-way tickets. So I had this list of countries. I had what country needs visa, and that's it. No clear plan. So I would plan for 2 weeks and go from there. I got to Asia and I got overwhelmed immediately. And so I started traveling quickly, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Thailand, and Singapore again. And what happened, my mind, first of all, because no one was around me, I was looking in the world as a baby, kind of ready for anything that comes. And the only rule that I set to yourself, just go with the flow. Mm-hmm. Do not try to control anything. Just go with the flow. Stop being a control freak. And see what life will bring you. And so contrast happened very quickly. So I was able to see super clean Singapore, super dirty Kuala Lumpur, a lot of money, poverty. And then when I was going back on my way back through Abu Dhabi and then Europe, I also started seeing how women are being treated differently, right? How different countries evolve in different areas, education versus, let's say, oil industry, right? So very quickly, so much contrast brought a lot of energy into me. And my brain started shifting and thinking through. Mm-hmm. And I also started working on going through my entire life and trying to find what made me happy, no matter how long I've been doing it, my whole life. Because the reason why I felt unfulfilled in my role, I realized at some point that I get bored of doing the same thing after 8 months.
Yeah.
And so the question was like, what can you do your whole life over and over with keep being excited about it, but without being bored of it?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing to point out because in one of the workbooks that I have, I talk about interests. And in finding your interest, I asked the question, what is something that you do that you can get lost in for hours and you're good, right? And we all have that. We all have something that we can do for hours and hours and hours. And someone will come in and say, why are you still here? Why are you still doing this? So you were able to ask yourself that question, and what came up for you?
Yeah, so I was able to identify 3 areas, and it was very interesting because I didn't realize it all was rooted from since I was 4 years old. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things, I always been in front of the public. I was always in front of the public doing public speaking, reading poetry or something. But when I came to Canada, one of the big things happened. My English was not very good.
Mm.
And I kind of told myself, forget about those areas. You're not going to be speaking in public. And then for about 3 years, I stopped presenting at all because I was learning English. I had basic jobs. I was training people, but more like one-to-one approach, right?
Mm.
And so at one point, when I had to present again in front of the company, I was fearing it. And then I also was thinking that it's bad to be proud of being good in public speaking.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought people would think that I'm
arrogant.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't know.
It's a big thing. Like, women shrink themselves because they don't want people to think that they like being good.
Yeah.
Because they're good. But yeah.
So true. And I don't know when that shift happened in my life, but it did. And when I was on the trip, I realized that I was like, oh my God, but what I love about it, it's exactly what I love in my personal life because I'm obsessed with adrenaline. So I'm the person who jump out of the planes, does skydiving. I just swam with sharks during my last birthday.
Ooh.
And all that to say, it helps me to feel alive. It helps me to feel that life is bright around me. And what I realized, I missed that in my work life. And that's exactly what was missing. And then when I flipped back to public speaking, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly it. You stressed before, you excited before, you cannot speak, cannot breathe 10 minutes before. So you have to listen to music to calm yourself down. When you start, you kind of doing it as a baby, not really good. And then when you get in the groove, you're really good at it and you bring something into people's lives. And by the end, people feel excited, inspired. I feel exhausted from adrenaline. At the same time, I feel so fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so even that exhaustion in the end of the day, it's a gift. And so I realized that was first thing. So public speaking was my adrenaline in work. The second thing that I realized, it was traveling. And it was traveling for not just traveling. So I've traveled a lot.
Wait, what's your zodiac sign?
I'm Cancer.
Oh my God! Why are you describing me? I'm like, why are you describing me? Okay, sorry. Continue.
That is so funny.
Continue. Public speaking, travel. Okay, I think I'm Cancer as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, so I'm sure we have a lot to share. And yes, the second part was traveling for work. So what I realized, I'm obsessed with having my days busy and doing work and personal and making that fit together and seeing something new. That was something so fascinating for me. So that was the second thing that I really realized that I need to keep in my life. And the third thing was to help people to change their lives in the positive way. So I knew that I had to do something that will enable people to come home and be happy after being at work, to be happy at home, and to really, really see good in life. There is so much negative in life, and I've been that negative person, and going through a divorce was also living with that kind of negative person. And I believe that we all can change and enjoy life. So it's all in our hands. So helping people do that was my third element. And then I started thinking, how can you combine it all?
Yeah, I like that. Believing that we can change. I think that is something that people forget, which is why they stay stuck. Like, you realize you're not fulfilled. You realize you're not satisfied, but you stay there and you stay stuck, right? So, thank you for listening to today's episode. What did you get from today's episode? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to come back for more next week. Talk to you soon, and wishing you a happy, balanced, and successful life.